Good day everyone, it's my pleasure to speak to you about assessment, mitigation design and monitoring results for lesser horseshoe bats on a road improvement scheme that faced significant challenges, in particular because it runs through a special area of conservation designated in part for lesser horseshoe bats and the caves in which they hibernate. Part of the Trans-European Road Network, the A465 Heads of Valleys Road between Abergavenny and Hirwaun was first built in the 1960s. It has been split up into 6 separate sections for improvement. The road is being upgraded from a 2+1 to a dual carriageway. Section 2 runs from Hirwaun to Bryn Mawr. Sections 1, 3 and 4 have been completed, while Section 2 began in January 2015 and is due for completion later this year. The scheme impacts included lesser horseshoe bat roost loss and potential disturbance, loss of foraging habitat and potential severance of habitats. With an extensive baseline to draw on of bat surveys undertaken between 1995 and 2014, lesser horseshoe bat monitoring is being undertaken during construction and for up to 10 years after opening. There are a number of organisations involved in the project team, with the ultimate client being the Welsh Government. Richard Green Ecology is subcontracted to deal with bat issues by RPS, who are advising Costain, the principal contractor. There have been a number of engineering challenges due to a large number of environmental constraints, as shown on the slide, as well as challenges caused by the topography, geology and made ground conditions from mine waste and the lower standards of the original road construction compared to today's requirements. We had specific baseline survey information going back to 1995, plus other data sources to inform the assessment. Survey extent and design was agreed with Natural Resources Wales, and in addition a technical advisory group made up of bat specialists, road engineers and designers was formed to advise on survey and mitigation design, and also to satisfy the appropriate assessment conclusion was beyond reasonable scientific doubt. This slide shows the extent and distribution of lesser horseshoe bat features to give you some idea of what we had to deal with. It includes a large number of caves in the limestone karst gorge used for hibernation, as well as other roosts, including day, night and maternity roosts, and culverts or pedestrian subways that were used by lesser horseshoe bats to cross under the existing road. The pale yellow shading is part of the Usk Bat Site's special area of conservation. The site passes through the southern edge of the largest component site of the Usk Bat Site SAC. Other component sites are shown in the slide. The section 2 of the A465 is shown as the bold black line. The most important bat features are shown on this slide, including 4 maternity roosts shown as red bats, with 1 being under the existing Clydeck viaduct at the western end of the scheme. Also of note is the location of Saleyard River crossing in the centre of the slide, where the highest bat activity index for bats crossing the road was recorded. Also the location of the new bat house constructed as part of the scheme mitigation, which is the yellow bat at the western end of the scheme. The scheme follows the line of the River Clydeck as it passes down the gorge, with the river crossing the road in several places. The caves are located at the western end within the special area of conservation. Also note the location of Hopyard Underpass at the eastern end, which I will speak about later. In summary, mitigation included planting of deciduous woodland to replace that lost by the edge of the road, retention of under-road crossings, i.e. culverts and bridges, retention of road lighting to avoid lesser horseshoe bats flying low over the road at risk of collision with vehicles, sensitive working practices to destroy bat roosts, i.e. timing and careful destruction under watching brief following exclusion of bats, construction of a new bat house designed to be suitable for both breeding and hibernation, 5 new underground roosts along section 2 plus 4 along section 3 to the west as compensatory measures required by Natural Resources Wales as part of the appropriate assessment, improvements to one of the existing maternity roosts to improve its productivity, and improvements to Hopyard Underpass on section 1 of the A65, which was constructed previously under another contract, where approximately a third of lesser horseshoe bats were crossing over the road instead of using the underpass to cross safely. Minimising existing vegetation removal was a key objective, including under Saleyard Bridge and close to culvert extensions. In the interim period between clearing vegetation and constructing the new carriageway, debris netting was used to provide cover and guidance for bats. Whilst not all 17 crossings had been confirmed as having bats flying through them during baseline surveys, it was considered that bats may use them, and therefore all culverts apart from 2 were retained on their original line and extended with pipes of no lesser cross-section than those existing. The 2 that had to be moved for engineering reasons were kept as close as possible to the original. One of those was used by bats in the first season after it was completed. A new culvert for bats of 1.8 metres diameter was also provided in the eastern part of the scheme, where there was an absence of safe bat crossings. At Saleyard River crossing, we pollarded trees beneath it rather than cutting to ground level, knowing that the trees would probably die, but to maintain some additional flight line structure to the riverbank to encourage bats to continue to fly along the river. Because of the topography on the side of the gorge, extending existing culverts was challenging. This plan shows an example of a pedestrian subway repurposed and extended for bats, where we had to include a vertical shaft on the northern end. We also included baffles inside with perches between to provide additional roosting opportunity. Woodland habitat loss was calculated, including lines of trees and areas of mature scrub adjacent to the road. Because of the existing noise and light disturbance from vehicles in the lit road, these habitats were unlikely to be well utilised by bats. In particular, we considered the amount of habitat loss close to maternity and hibernation roosts. Based on a review of scientific studies, critical foraging areas were determined as 1 km radii around maternity roosts and 1.2 km radii around hibernation roosts. It was considered essential to replace lost foraging habitat within these areas, and this was done by acquiring land as essential mitigation for woodland planting. A ratio of at least 1-to-1 replacement was used within critical foraging areas and the SAC. Woodland was planted on land away from the road, chosen to improve connectivity within the landscape that was of low ecological value, such as heavily sheep grazed improved pasture. 4 low-use roosts used for both day and night roosting were destroyed as part of the scheme, along with 1 mine adit which was used by up to 3 lesser horseshoe bats for hibernation. As compensation, 5 underground pipe and chamber roosts were constructed along the scheme, one of which was more extensive than the others with the aim of providing hibernation potential, plus conversion of a previous pedestrian subway and provision of roosting opportunities within the larger culvert crossings. As explained, a potential maternity bat house was also constructed at the west end of the scheme. As part of the appropriate assessment process, Natural Resources Wales were initially not confident that there would be no adverse effect on the integrity of the SAC, so 4 pipe and chamber stepping stone roosts were also provided along section 3 to the west as compensatory measures to aid migration over high moorland to the Ebu Valley to improve migration and genetic viability within the population. Design features of the bat house included positioning it to receive as much sun as possible to maximise solar thermal gain. It has a natural slate roof over bituminous felt and a large loft of an open construction, i.e. no trusses to avoid clutter in the roost. It has a fairly steep roof angle to maximise solar thermal gain in the spring and autumn when temperatures are generally lower than in midsummer. It has a cooler ground floor with alcoves for roosting and 2 accesses, one of which is via an underground pipe from an adjacent stream gorge. This is protected against human entry with a cage over the portal which bats can fly through. The other entrance is a barred window also protected by a small pond outside which prevents scrub vegetation from growing over and obscuring the entrance. It also contains an insulated cool room which has a rainwater feed from the roof to fill a stone-filled sump to maintain humidity for hibernation. The sump is filled with stone to avoid bats falling in and drowning. Woodland has been planted around the bat house and connects it to the nearest woodland habitat mitigation area. The site is also overlooked by a small terrace of houses which reduces the risk of vandalism. These photos show the bat house shortly after construction and landscape planting, with the bottom left photo showing the cage over the underground access and the 2 bottom right photos showing the inside of the bat house, both in the loft and the downstairs rooms. And these photos show bats using the bat house, including droppings in the loft. The top right photo is the sump in the cool room and the bottom photo is the window access. This plan shows one of the underground chamber roosts. So we've got a 900mm horizontal pipe connected to a vertical chamber of 1.2 meters in diameter and 3 meters high. This photo shows one of the entrances of the underground pipe and chamber roosts shortly after construction. And these photos show the insides of one of the pipe and chamber roosts with the horizontal axis on the left, the bottom of the chamber in the middle showing the connection with the ground and the moisture maintaining humidity, and on the right looking up at the ceiling with a rough textured finish to bats to hang from. One of the underground chamber roosts contains infrared heater mats. This is built into the bank of the River Clydach just upstream of Saleyard River Crossing, where previously there had been a temporary bridge for construction traffic. It was provided to offer an alternative maternity roost and in compensation for a low-use day roost in a caravan toilet block. It was decided to provide a warm underground structure rather than an above-ground structure to avoid vandalism. These photos show the entrance and the chamber with a roughened surface for bats to cling from, as well as the heater mat which is protected behind a cage. This converted subway roost has a cool area at the back and a heated insulation box in the section closest to the entrance to provide potential breeding conditions. Upturned dustbins have been used to provide enclosed roosting areas. This is the largest underground roost. It is in a spiral arrangement to provide the maximum length within the smallest area. Soil has been used to bury the pipes for insulation, and it is constructed at a slight angle off the horizontal with the aim of trapping cold air within it and providing a temperature gradient throughout so that bats have a range to choose from. Chambers are constructed so that there is connection with the earth below to maintain humidity. These photos show the arrangement of the pipes before being buried, the entrance, and the mound of soil piled over the top for insulation. This has since been planted with vegetation. One of the mitigation measures was to improve conditions in the existing maternity roost at Cliddock House. As the slate roof is not lined, heat retention is poor, so a lined hotbox was installed and the roost entrance made larger so that all of the bats could emerge earlier, maximising foraging time whilst insect abundance is highest at dusk. To avoid bats flying over the road during construction, i.e. between removing existing lighting columns and replacing with new ones, a series of globe lights was used to provide a minimum of 5 lux illumination over the road to avoid bats being killed by traffic. Monitoring has been undertaken annually during construction and will continue for 5 years after opening, with further monitoring in years 7 and 10. New roosts are monitored by internal inspection. Cave hibernation surveys, pre-parturition maternity roost emergence surveys and juvenile counts used to inform the baseline are continuing. A sample of under-road crossings has been monitored using static bat detectors. As these have been shown to be used by bats during construction and baseline data is insufficient to make any statistical conclusion, this will not continue beyond construction. 2 counts of maternity roosts prior to birthing are undertaken by emergence survey followed by internal inspection. The maximum number of bats recorded is used as a count for that year. The SAC Conservation Objective Performance Indicator is based on a 5-year period. The table shows results for individual roosts, whilst the graph shows combined maximum counts. Whilst there have been some dips, likely due to weather conditions, the trend is positive. There has been a noticeable increase in numbers using Cliddock House since the hotbox was installed and the entrance enlarged in the autumn of 2015. 2 emergence counts of adults at each maternity roost is undertaken, approximately 1 week apart from late June to early August, followed by internal inspections to count pups. The highest 4 counts have been during the construction period, with counts in 2018 and 2019 being significantly greater than the expected level, taking the Welsh national trend into account. Whilst there are some fluctuations, productivity, i.e. the ratio of juveniles to adults, is fairly constant. Whilst the bat house has not yet been confirmed to be used by breeding, bats started using it in the first season after it was built, and numbers have increased every year to 57 bats recorded this July. It also appears to be an important autumn roost and was used in 2020 for hibernation. Hibernation counts were undertaken by cave exploration each February. Numbers have increased during construction despite one of the most favoured caves having not been surveyed since 2014, as it is considered unsafe to enter. The top 5 counts have all been during construction, and accounting for the Welsh national trend, the increase in 2015 was statistically significant. The main under-road crossing at Saleyard has continued to be used by bats following construction of the new bridge over the river. The maximum bat activity index recorded during the baseline surveys has been exceeded during construction. Bats have also been recorded flying through all of the other crossings regularly monitored, plus a number of those that have been monitored on an ad hoc basis, with pre-construction activity levels exceeded at 4 out of the 5 during the construction. Whilst not part of Section 2 works, it was noticed that around a third of lesser horseshoe bats were choosing to fly over the road at Hopyard Underpass on Section 1, which had been constructed previously and had grills at each end to prevent human access. In order to improve its effectiveness, we tried various measures to increase the numbers of bats using the underpass, with the most effective being the replacement of the grills with palisade fences to prevent human access but provide a larger opening for bats to fly above them. The percentage of bats flying through the underpass increased to between 93 and 98% following replacement of the grills with the fences, and it was assumed that some of the bats were simply choosing to risk crossing the road rather than negotiate the smaller apertures of the grills. So we are nearing the end of the construction phase and are cautiously confident that the scheme has not had an adverse effect on lesser horseshoe bats or the integrity of the Usk bat site SAC, meeting all of the success criteria set as part of the appropriate assessment. Traffic speed and volume is likely to increase after opening, although the lighting included in the scheme design seeks to avoid any bat traffic collisions. The scheme landscaping, including replacement woodland foraging areas, will increase in value as it matures, and uptake of new roosts is expected to increase as the landscaping matures and bats find the new roosts. Thank you for listening. I'd also like to acknowledge the other team members as shown.